So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best solo PvP builds in Albion Online. So for each and every single build I will show you what abilities and armor you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and show you the best skill rotation that you want to use. And then lastly I will show you the best gameplay, so you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. So no matter how much silver you have or how high or low your weapon masteries are, you can easily use these builds and follow the step-by-step guide. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get straight into it. So then moving over to the first solo PvP build, which is the Frost Staff. I personally have been playing this weapon for years now, and it is my most favorite one because of its playstyle, the ability to be a real mage with teleportability and a huge outplay potential. And of course, like any of my builds, this setup is amazing for PvP and PvE. So if you're looking for one of the highest damage builds, then this is the one for you. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapons we want to go with the Frost Staff. So for your Q you pick the third option, then for your W pick the second option, and then lastly for your passive go with the Aggressive Caster, which is the third option. Then for your offhand you want to go with the Tome of Spells, then for the helmet you want to use the Royal Cal and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the chest armor go with the Scholar's Robe and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the boots go with the Royal Sandals and choose the third ability and third passive. Then for your cape you pick the Morgana cape, and then lastly for your consumables you want to go with the Poison Potions and Amulet. But then for the alternatives, specifically for PvP, if you don't like the Royal Sandals, then go with the Cleric Sandals and pick the third ability and third passive. And then for your potions, switch from Poison Potions to Resistance Potions. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So for the first Q ability we have the Ice Shard, which drops this circle-shaped ice that explodes, dealing bunch of damage. Then the second W skill is called the Frost Nova, and this ability teleports you, and if you're right on the enemy while teleporting, then you will stun the enemy and do a bit of damage. Then for the E skill we have the Freezing Wind, and this will shoot these ice shards in front of you, dealing damage to the enemy and at the same time freezing them in a place for a second or two. Then for the R skill we have the Speed Caster, and when we activate it we will receive 50% cast time reduction, and all of our skills will cost 75% less energy. Then for the D skill we have the Perpetual Energy, and when using this ability it will give us energy cost reduction to 0, so after activating, in the next 15 seconds you can use as many skills as possible, and all of them will cost 0 energy, aka mana. And then lastly for the F ability we have the Defenseless Rush, which gives us increased movement speed by 75% and increased damage by 15%. Then as far as your cape goes, it will give us a passive that when you use your E ability, it will automatically activate this cape, which will give us a additional 50% cast time reduction. So with all this said, let's move over to the rotation, and for PvP and PvE, it basically works the same way. So then for your rotation at the beginning of the fight, you want to activate the F ability, then activate the D skill, and then use the E ability. And then from here we just spam the Q button as much as possible. Then when you see that your speed slows down, activate the R ability again and just keep on spamming your Q button. Then when our abilities get on cooldown in the meanwhile, we keep on using the W and Q spell, and then when our main skills are back up, we repeat the same rotation. So let's see what we did in this rotation. But first of all, using the F ability, we give ourselves plus 15% damage increase. Then we use the D skill, which makes all of our abilities cost 0 energy, and then we use the E skill that activates our cape, and we spam our Q button for very quick and easy damage. Then when that slows down, it means that our cape effect ends. We activate the R skill, which is the second speed boost, so we spam the Q ability again, and that's about it. The main strength lies in how much Q abilities you can use, and as we have a lot of energy reductions, teleport and a huge AoE spell that we basically can spam 24/7, we have everything we need for any type of content. So in my final conclusions, if you're looking for, in my opinion, the most fun and highest damage build in Albion Online, then for sure check this one out, and I hope you have fun. So then moving over to the second solo player build, which is the Spiked Gauntlets, and this is one of the new weapons that was just added in last Albion update. So if you're looking to change up your playstyle, or you want to try out a brand new weapon with cool abilities and useful tools that will give you very high damage and fun playstyle, then this is the build for you. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapon we want to go with the Spiked Gauntlet. So for your Q you pick the second option, then for your W pick the first option, and then lastly for your passive go with the Fatal Fury, which is the the first option. Then for the helmet you want to use the assassin's hood and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the chest armor, go with the cleric robe and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the boots, go with the royal sandals and choose the third ability and second passive. Then for your cape, you pick the Tether cape, and then lastly for your consumables, you want to go with the resistance potions and beef stew. But then again, if you want to specifically do only solo fame farming, then you want to instead use the poison potions and cabbage soup. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build and how to get out of your abilities the best possible results. So for the first Q spell, we have the Dragon Leap, which leaps towards the enemy position while kicking all enemies in the way. This will deal damage, and if you hit at least one enemy, you'll be able to use an uppercut, which then deals additional damage, and then you'll be able to throw the enemy in the air. So then for the second W skill, we have the Triple Kick, and this ability dashes towards the enemy possession while repeatedly kicking all targets, which deals damage, and you can pull a single enemy player along with you. But like I said, this only works for other players. So then for the E ability, we have the Gravitational Collapse, which unleashes a powerful punch, and it does a lot of damage and slows all enemies depending on what armor is the enemy wearing. And for PvE, this ability will count all mobs as a plate user, so you will be able to deal the highest amount of damage straight away. So then moving over to the R skill, which is called the Everlasting Spirit, and when activating this ability we will become immune to all damage, and if we get hit by the enemy while using this ability, then we will extend our immunity for 3 seconds, and we will get a 20% damage increase on top of all this. Then the next ability is called the Meditation, and this ability lowers all of our cooldowns by 80% while channeling. So because of us using this skill, we will be able to use our weapon skills a lot more often. And then for the last and final ability, we have the Defenseless Rush, and this ability gives you 75% movement speed and plus 15% damage increase, while at the same time decreasing your defenses for 13%. So we only want to use this ability to run away or if we are about to deal a lot of damage. Then as far as your cape goes, we are using the Tether cape, so every 15 seconds by auto-attacking the enemy, this will automatically activate, and it will do a bunch of damage on top of everything else. So with all this said, now let's move over to the rotation that you want to use. So at the beginning of the fight we want to activate the F ability, then we use the Q skill, and then we use the E ability, and then we finish it off with the W skill. Then from here we just want to activate our R ability, and then straight away we want to channel the D skill, and then when the channeling is over, we should have all of our weapon cooldowns back up. So then we repeat the same rotation, and that's about it. So now let's see what we did in this rotation. But first, while using the F ability, we will gain 75% movement speed and plus 15% damage increase. So then we want to use the Q ability to do damage and get closer to the enemy. Then we use the ability to do massive amounts of AoE damage, and then we finish it off with our W skill. Then from here we just use both of our skills, which is R plus D, and the R skill will give us immunity to all damage, while at the same time we will be channeling our cooldown reduction skill. So then by the time we are done with this, we will get our main damage abilities back up, and it's that simple. So then in a quick summary, if you are looking to play the new weapons, which are the War Gloves, and you want to use the best solo player build, then for sure try this one out and I hope you have fun. So then going over to the third build, which is the Fire Staff. And I chose this weapon because it is very high damage, and with basically zero changes to our setup, we can use the solo build for PvP and PvE. So if you are looking for one of the best and most fun solo builds, then this is the one for you. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapon we want to go with the Fire Staff. So for your Q, you pick the first option, then for your W, pick the second option. And then lastly for your passive, go with the Aggressive Caster, which is the third option. Then for your offhand, you want to go with the Tome of Spells. Then for the helmet, you want to go with the Hunter's Hood and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the chest armor, go with the Cleric Robe and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the boots, go with the Guardian Boots and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the cape, pick the Tether cape. And then lastly for your consumables, you want to go with the Healing Potions and Pork Omelette. But then if you specifically want to do fame farming, then instead you want to use cheap poison potions. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build and how to get out of your abilities the best possible results. So for the first Q spell we have the Firebolt, which shoots a bolt that will damage the enemy, and at the same time he will get ignited, which means that he will be taking a burning effect for the next 4 seconds, and this can stack up to 5 times. So then for the second W skill we have the Wall of Flames, and this ability creates a fireball that will set on fire all enemies that touches the wall. I personally really find this ability useful for PvP and PvE, but specifically for fame farming you can use any other W skill, and it will do great damage as well. So for this skill we have a wide versatility to choose from, and then for the E ability we have the Fire Blast. And this skill will shoot a massive ball of fire, which deals a lot of damage, and the enemies again will be set on fire for 4 seconds. So then moving over to the R skill, which is called the Everlasting Spirit, and when activating this ability we will become immune to all damage, and if we get hit by the enemy while using this ability, then we will extend our immunity for 3 seconds, and we will get a 20% increased damage on top of all this. Then the next skill is called the Retaliate, and this ability will increase your damage resistance, but at the same time you will reflect 70% of all enemy damage. So instead of you taking big damage, he will damage himself. And then for the last and final F skill we have the Giant ability, and when activating the spell it will make our character twice as big, and it will double our current HP for the next 8 seconds as well. So then as far as your cape goes, we are using the Tet for cape, so every 15 seconds by auto attacking the enemy, this cape will automatically activate and it will do a bunch of damage on top of everything else. But as the fire staff basically almost never uses his auto attacks, so we'll have to remember to auto attack the enemy once every 15 seconds. So with all this said, now let's move over to the rotation that you want to use. So at the beginning of the fight we first of all want to hit the enemy with our Q skill, then we use our E ability, and then we want to use our Q ability again. Then if the enemy gets close to us, or if we are fighting mobs, then we place down the firewall aka the R ability, and then from here depending on the fight, we either way save our defenses or use Everlasting Spirit to become immune to all damage, then we use the Retaliate to reflect 70% of enemies damage and much more. So now with that said, let's see what we did in this rotation. But first, while using the Q ability we will do damage to the enemy and set him on fire. So then we use the E ability to do massive amounts of damage and set the enemy on fire again. Then now we want to spam our Q ability again as much as possible, and we want to do this at least 4 times because it will activate our aggressive caster passive, which will increase our casting speed. But then besides that, from here depending on the fight we use our defensive skills, but mostly I would recommend to use the W skill for extra damage for fame farming, or then save it if you're doing PvP, and that's about it. So like I explained at the start, this fire staff build is very cheap and beginner friendly because you only need to use your Q and E ability, and then the rest abilities you can use whenever you want. This build has no stacks and no need for timing, so as soon as your abilities come back up you can just use them, and it's that simple. So then in a quick summary, if you are looking to play one of the cheapest solo player builds in the game that is very powerful for PvP and PvE, then this is the build for you, so good luck. And with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Albion online builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.
Yo, I ain't here